G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Truen. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome, everyone. Today I'm interviewing Rob Watchorn from Blythe Watchorn, based here in Hobart, Australia, where I'm based. Thanks for your time today, Rob.
That's a pleasure.
Let's start with how we know each other. So Mick Dennehy, who I've known for quite some years, you've known him for a lot longer, and he's helped you with your business over the years, I understand.
Yeah, so Mike does some business mentoring for me. He's been a great help. Keeps me accountable, and he's dragged me along to some of your Grow a Small Business meetings, which I thoroughly enjoy, and will continue coming to. And I guess that's really where we first met. And then I've given a small talk at those meetings as well. Yes.
Yeah, I was really impressed with your talk, your particular focus on the way that you approach your team and looking after your people, especially a big focus over the years on apprentices. So I thought you'd be great to have on the cast, but particularly to talk about that because you do work in a tough industry, in the trade industry. So maybe tell our audience a bit about your business, what it does and how it makes money.
Okay, so I've got it's a small renovation business. I've got 10 employees and myself. We focus very much on high quality work, and I guess most of our projects are top end projects. Most of our clients are professional people. They don't need to borrow a large portion of their money, which makes operating my business a little bit easier. Most of our contracts are on a cost plus basis, which in the environment that we've had over the last couple of years is really the best way to run a small construction business that's very quality focused, in my opinion. So that's what we do, and that's how we make money.
Great. So you've kind of niched down there. I assume you didn't start just in renovations. Did you start with building? Maybe tell us how you started out.
So really, I started 31 years ago with a business partner, a couple of utes and a dog. And we were young, we were 21. I think there's a great benefit in going into business when you're young because you really don't know your limitations. And to be honest, you don't think you have any. So you approach everything with great gusto, expecting success. And so I think that kind of enthusiasm and passion when we were starting out really did us some big favours. We just went off and did a letterbox drop around Sandy Bay and Battery Point because they were the areas that we wanted to focus in. And
for the audience, those two suburbs in Hobart are the wealthiest suburbs. That's a really smart move.
So we went off and we sort of target marketed in those areas. So that was 31 years ago, and for 24 years I've had the business on my own. My business partner left and went off to seek other business opportunities, which he's had several of, and he's actually now back in the building industry, funnily enough. But for me, when he left, that was, for me, a really, really a great moment, really. I thought that I was doing a 50% portion of the work. When he left, I became aware that I was doing a hell of a lot more than that. And so all of a sudden, I had this business that I didn't have to do that much for, but it was all mine. I could do what I wanted with it. I had direction. And so since then, I think really the first 20 years were quite hard, to be perfectly honest, or first 15. We entered the industry at a time when it was the late 80s, early 90s, and it wasn't good, and it was very difficult. But the last 10 to 15 years have just been fantastic for our industry, and we've gone from strength to strength. I've kept the business small. That's the way I like it. It's only me in the office. I know I could grow it. I've done it before, but to do that, I need another 5 or 6 staff to get another person in the office to offset everything. And to be honest, it's not that much more profitable unless you then take the next step. And I'm just not prepared to do that at my age. I think we make relatively good money for what we do in the industry that we're in and focusing on the area that we're focusing on.
That's great. Yeah, it's something that I learned over time as well, is you don't necessarily have to grow if you don't want to, and you can make, as you just said, make more profit staying at a certain level rather than going through the pain of pushing up to another 5, 10, 15 team members to get to a higher profit level. So I hear that from a lot of business owners. So was it 1992 you started and you were 21?
Yeah, yes, that would be correct.
Yep. So that's the tail end of the recession there, and obviously with the GFC in 2008, and more recently another near miss of a recession. So those times would have been quite tough.
Well, they have been, and we've all seen the cycles come and go, or those of us that have been in business for some time. And that's another reason, really, why I've decided to keep the business the size it is. When things are tight, having 10 guys on, even doing upper end work for the clients that we do work for, the market really does tighten up. And it becomes quite difficult just to keep everybody busy doing profitable work rather than just doing anything you can to keep everyone busy. And of course, that's another secret.
Do you have any other key numbers you can share to illustrate the growth of the business over the 31 years? So you're at 10 team members now. What was the peak number of team members you got to?
I think we got to about 15, and that would have been not long before Pete left, my business partner. And we were going through, I guess it was a trial and error phase really with our business, because that's how we were learning back then. We'd try different things, see what worked, see what didn't, and then, swing our business around to focus on the things that did work rather than the things that didn't. And to be honest, it just became very stressful. All of a sudden, we found that, we had 15 guys. It was at a time where the work wasn't just flowing through the door. So we were taking on pretty much what we could to keep everybody going. We weren't doing the profitable work. We weren't picking and choosing. We were having to do whatever we could. And that's not a recipe for success.
No. And when did you, I'm assuming you didn't start just doing renovations, what that you're focusing on now, especially, and it's a great, again, niche that you've gone down to, just working really with professionals and wealthy people, so you don't have that noise of people can't pay, etc. So when did you transition to focus solely on renovations?
Quite early, to be honest. I would say probably 15 years ago.
Yep.
I think the other positive with keeping a business at a manageable size is that if you've been in it for quite a long time, you become known for what you do. People come to you because they want you to do their work rather than just coming to you because they want to get a quote. And then, so for us, I guess we do things on our own terms now, and we certainly couldn't have done that when we were young and we just started out in business because we were trying to establish ourselves. So we negotiate all our work on an open book basis now. I'm not interested in tendering on work against 3 to 5 other people because I simply can't provide the product and the service that I want to provide to my client for the cheapest possible price. It's just impossible. And it's not going to happen. We're not the cheapest builders in town. I'd like to think we're one of the best. And I'd like to think that we offer a really good quality service rather than just a good quality product. And to do that, it takes a bit longer. Yeah.
And do you have any other key numbers you're happy to share to illustrate the growth over the 31 years?
Well, we started off with 2 people and a dog. We've gone through various growing phases, and we've also cut back a little bit when we've had to, when the market's tightened right up. We've gone up to that 15 people, worked out that really for us and our business model and the market that we're in, it doesn't work that well. And we've come back to what I think is a stable number. I find that with 10 guys, I generally speaking don't have too many issues with employees. I'm able to keep people happy and enthusiastic and wanting to come to work every day. Once we get to 11 or 12, it just doesn't seem to work. We seem to have one bad egg or one person with a problem, and it seems to become infectious. And I really struggle with it, to tell you the truth. Maybe that's my own bad management as a people person. I really don't know, but I find that me and I'm doing the majority of the work. So I'm doing the quoting and the estimating, the council approvals, the HR, absolutely everything. So I have a limited amount of time that I can spend on each section. And yeah, so for me, as I was saying, if I want to take that next step, if I want to employ more people, it just means that I need to have more people in the administrational roles and things. And at the moment, I'm trying not to do that because I'm lining my own bank account as much as I can heading into the later years of life.
Yeah.
The other thing with having an increased workforce is that you just become a slave to finding that work. And then, unfortunately, other sides of your business seem to fall away a little bit. And so, yeah, for me, I guess, the only person in the admin and running the whole show, it's a perfect number.
Yeah. It's
I
interesting.
don't have a lot of other numbers for you, really, Troy.
Yeah. It's interesting. Just yesterday, I heard the managing partner of Blackbird Ventures, which is Australia's #1 venture capital firm, speak. And he, they were invested early in Canva, Atlassian, so they've knocked a few out of the park, invested in hundreds of other mainly tech companies. But he made the point, because he was a founder himself before he became a VC, venture capitalist. But he made the point that between 1 and 12 team members, it's pretty cruisy. Everyone's loving it. But 12 to 20 is fucking horrendous. Once you get to that, and then 20 to 50 is the next, it gets harder. So it was interesting to hear that number 12 to 20 from his experience. And I've seen it with other businesses as well. All that extra complexity and all the, the relationships that have to be managed just exponentially grow because there's more people in the team. So yeah, I think you've hit the sweet spot there with 10.
Well, that's trial and error.
Yeah. And a lot of grey hair.
Yeah, not much of it.
When was the moment you felt like you had succeeded?
I think there's been quite a few of them, to tell you the truth. I think there have been some dark times. I think anyone in business has had some hard, stressful times themselves, like when COVID started, and often they're things that are out of our control. But right now, I feel really good, very positive about the business. As I said, the last 10 to 15 years have been really good. Something that I wasn't going to share today was that I had a marriage separation 10 years ago. It's probably not the best thing to be talking about in a podcast like this, but for me, that was one of my very dark times. I became ill afterwards. My number of staff dropped off. I had problems with workflow. At that stage, I met Mike Dennehy. Well, I didn't meet Mike Dennehy. Mike Dennehy had been doing my accounting work for some time. He's asked me if I would be interested in going down the path of doing some business mentoring with him. Obviously, there's a cost that's associated with that, but I was lonely in my business at that time. I was by myself. I was feeling negative, and I was at a crossroads. I had to decide whether or not I was going to grab this challenge, and if I had the energy to run with it again and make it all happen again. I felt like I was starting my business again.
Yeah.
And I set myself a target of 10 years to recover from all of that. And I feel like I've made it. I'm at 10 years now. I'm where I wanted to be. Things seem to be falling into place again for me. Yeah, everything just seems to come off. Obviously I've tried to do the right thing by people. I'm very ethical in the way I do business. I pay people as quickly as I possibly can. I've got great business relationships, and I believe that if you go out of your way to establish your business with some sort of ethics and morals, things tend to go your way. I've seen people that don't run their business in that way, and they seem to have one problem after another. So I'm a great believer in karma.
Yeah.
Not everybody is, and I get that. But for me, yes, I think, coming back to your question, I think right now is probably one of the most rewarding times for me in my business.
That's great that you, in those dark times, set yourself that 10-year goal, and you've obviously achieved it. I also, my marriage ended probably 12 years ago, and it was a really tough time as well, and that took a long time to get out of that dark place as well. So it's not easy, especially when you're running a business. You can't necessarily just take time off. 10 years ago. So what's that? 2013. So it's a long journey to take. What does success look like to you?
Success to me is financial security and the time to spend doing the things I want to do with the people I love. I don't think it's all about money and assets for me anymore. I think maybe it was once upon a time. But my own happiness and well-being is probably more important to me than anything else now, that of mine and my family. So as long as I have the financial capacity to be able to enjoy life comfortably and provide for the people around me, I think the next big challenge for me is time, the time to actually to be able to do it. And I think that's something that most people in small business really struggle with, finding the balance between work and life. And once again, Mike's helped me with that a little bit, in that, he said to me, you need to have Friday afternoons off. And I had this thing where I couldn't have time off from work. And if I did, I couldn't tell anyone that worked for me, because I had to continue to work my guts out if I wanted other people to work hard for me. And I was just so wrong. I didn't realise it at the time. And now I feel like I'm letting him down and I'm letting our plan down if I don't have Friday afternoons off. So I've gone from feeling guilty about having a Friday afternoon off to feeling guilty about not having it off, which is fantastic. So it really encourages me to take that time off. I find it a challenge, there's no doubt about it, but it makes a big difference for me. And when you've been in business for 30 odd years, you start to get a bit tired, and if you don't allow yourself the time to recover and rekindle, then you're never going to have the enthusiasm that you need to run a successful business.
Yeah, I certainly struggle with that as well, because I love what I do. 99.97% of what I do anyway. There's a couple of boards I share that a couple of annoying shareholders, but I won't mention those. And it's really hard for me not to work because I love what I do. So I've got to put things in place, like my chocolate Labrador Carlton supporter. He has to be taken out for a bushwalk nearly every day. And a few other things to make sure that I'm keeping my hours under control. Otherwise, I used to work 100-hour weeks when I first started 24 years ago, and that's clearly stupid and not sustainable.
Yeah, well, I was the same. It was ridiculous during those days when I said that, it really wasn't that easy during the 90s and the early 2000s. Where I'd get up at that stage, I was still on the tools. And I think that was probably one of the best things to happen to me, was to get a back injury and have to get off the tools. And I know, I'm making a positive out of a negative, but it really did change my business life. Do you want me to tell that little story?
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
So I was 35, really flogged myself physically, working from the age of 17 to 35. I was working for my neurosurgeon at the time, doing a job for him. And I went to see him on a professional basis. He did all the scans and things, told me what the situation was with my back. Since then, I've had a couple more operations, but it's really good now. And he said, well, you've got the degeneration in your spine of a 55-year-old. You're 35. You can keep doing what you're doing. If you want to, I'll fix you up. You're going to have a hard recovery, and you'll probably get another 5 years before you really start to suffer. Or you can get off the tools. Quality of life. And for me as a tradesperson, I really struggled with that, because I believed that the only reason we were doing work for these people was because they wanted me and my team there doing that work. So I posed a question to him, and that was, okay, Andrew, if I'm not on the tools anymore, will we still be doing your work? And he said, of course you will, as long as you're managing it. And so for me, that was a defining moment. And I remember the inside of his office and everything else so clearly right till now, because he gave me an answer that I really wasn't expecting, that gave me permission to go and do what had to be done. And that allowed me to grow my business. It allowed me to focus more on the people. It allowed me to focus more on my clients. And I stepped away from doing those horrendous hours. So up until then, I would go to bed late after being in the office. I would get up at 5:30 in the morning, 5 o'clock, not to go for a walk or anything else, but just to go straight to the office. Then I'd have a quick shower. I'd be on site at 7:30. Then I worked to 4:30, 5 o'clock. I'd come home, help my wife with the tea and the kids. And then as soon as that was done, 6:30, 7 o'clock, we'd read stories and I'd be back in the office until midnight. And then I'd be up at 5 o'clock the next morning and I'd do the same thing. And then
Jeez.
I'd probably work a Saturday as
Yeah.
well.
Mm.
And it was like that. And it was really, really hard.
Mm.
So for me, that back injury changed my working life in a really positive way.
Mm. Number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast-growing business?
I don't know that I'm that qualified to answer that question. We do a fair bit of marketing, but to be honest, I'm not super tech savvy. I think that technology has to play a big place in marketing a business now. And so really I don't know that I'm the best person to ask that question to. We have a website. At the end of the day, for me, in a small community with a reasonably small market, because we're only talking about 2 or 3 suburbs really, word of mouth is everything. It comes down to your reputation. And I know that I am talked about around town and my business is talked about around town as far as the quality of work and what we do and things, and it's in small circles. And so for me, I know it's not really marketing, but that is the most important thing for my business.
Yeah, it sounds to me like you've nailed that. You've built up a reputation. People are coming to you, and a lot of referrals. So that is probably the best marketing method you can have, and very inexpensive as well. And how did you fund the business?
No, I haven't really had to. We've slowly grown it. It's grown for some time. We operate the business with at a very comfortable level, I guess. We've built up the bank balance in the business. We're able to pay bills as they come in and not wait until we've been paid for things to be able to pay bills. I think if you want a stress-free life in business, you've got to have a decent bank balance and not too much debt. I think it's really easy to, go out and buy all the flash cars and do everything else. And people probably look at my business and see my guys driving around in new four-wheel drives and think, gosh, he must owe a lot of money. But because we've been in business for 30 years, we roll the value of our old cars into our new ones, and we might put some cash into the equation as well, which isn't something that our accountant would advise. So if you're listening, Mike, I'm sorry. However, for me, it's about having small debts on everything, and that they're not impeding your cash flow. And then if things tighten up, that not being that burden that it is for so many small businesses around, that they have debts which are perfectly fine while things are busy and the money's coming in the door. But as soon as things tighten up, they become a major problem. So I guess what I do is I run my business as far as debt goes on a level at which I could handle if business was very poor. And so it doesn't become too much of a stress, but obviously I've done that over a long time.
Yeah. And no other investors came into the business. Do you mind talking a little bit maybe about the exiting of your ex-business partner? Was it reasonably amicable?
Sure. We were very young, and it was very amicable. We're still very good mates. It was, as I was saying before, it was a very difficult time. I remember my father, who was in finance at the time, lecturing me about the amount of money I wasn't taking home and that it was below the minimum that he would have thought was acceptable. And I had to explain to him, well, if I took home any more, Dad, I'm sorry, mate, but the business won't be here. So that was why he left. The grass was greener on the other side. He saw things that he thought would be better for him at the end of the day that didn't pan out that way. But for me, it was fantastic.
Yeah, I've certainly been in that situation you mentioned before, where you've got business partners that aren't doing their equal share of time. It's a really difficult one to identify and secondly manage. But it sounds like it was the best thing that could have happened for you.
Yeah, well, for me, my role in the business at that time was I was costing and estimating all the work. I was organising the guys and the materials. He was doing all the book work. Well,
Right.
I didn't really know what that entailed because at that stage I didn't do the book work and I really didn't know. Back then we had a Reckon program. Now we use Xero. And I took over and I started doing the bookwork, and I was doing the bookwork in 2 hours on a Saturday morning.
Shit.
And I was going, well, hang on, well, this hasn't been a fair equation for the last, 7 years or whatever it is. And yeah, so it was a moment of rejoicing, really, once I'd been doing it for a month.
If you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
Yeah, I think I probably would. I think my industry's been really, really good for me. There are some interesting ways of looking at things, and I've often reflected upon them. One is that, and I guess I'm probably looking at these things too more now that I'm at the other end of my working life. But I often ask myself the question of, would I have been better off going and purchasing a business such as mine and paying what it was worth 10 or 15 years ago? And where would I be now had I have done that rather than slowly build it up to what it is today? And the answer to that question is that I think it would have been harder for me because I wouldn't have had the lead in. There would have been a definitive just start point where I had to start with it rolling.
Mm,
But I think I would have been a hell of a lot better off too.
mm.
Because although that debt, when you look at it to start off with, is a daunting thing, when you break it all down, take it out over its life cycle, and then you look at where you would be and how much it's cost you to get there, it would have probably been an easier road.
Yeah. Can you?
Particularly if I'd
Yeah.
had someone to mentor me and help me through that process.
Yeah. I think that's also a mistake I made early on as well. No mentors, or when I did have some, didn't listen to them all the time.
Yeah, no, have to listen to everyone, Troy. We know that now. We're older.
Yeah, that's right. Older, grey, and little hair. Yeah. Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
Yeah, okay. The most stressful point in my business growth journey would probably be the point, the dark times, I guess. There are two of them. The dark times at which I went through my marriage separation and the recovery from all of that, which we've already talked about. And the second point would have been around about the time that Pete left, to be perfectly honest. And I think that's why he left. We had, what did we have? We had one carpenter and two apprentices, and Pete and I at that time. It was stressful, but it was rewarding. I guess the first month was very stressful because I sort of didn't really know. I didn't have his support. I was on my own in the business all of a sudden. I was still on the tools, so I was time poor. And I really didn't know if I wanted to keep doing it myself, to be perfectly honest. And I had to go through that 6 months or so of continually asking myself that question until I came to the realization that, yes, this is what I wanted to do, and I was going to go and do it. And there was a 6 month period where I lost a bit of focus and wasn't really sure which way I was going to head, and things during that time slid backwards a little bit. And then as soon as I had found my mantra again, off we went, and things started just to build themselves from there. So I guess they're the two dark times that I've had. Interestingly, both of them have a psychological aspect to them.
Yes. Yeah, very tough. What area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
It comes down to my staff, the people that do the work for me and that are responsible for my business being what it is. And me being able to teach them exactly what it is that I want and how I want it done, in so much as the quality of the work that we're turning out, the way we want those particular tasks to be done that create that final product, the way that they communicate with my clients, the way that they communicate with each other, and the general well-being and happiness of my staff, really.
What have you enjoyed the least about managing the growth?
Oh, probably the cash flow at times, when you have the occasional person that takes a little bit long to pay, or for some reason needs to move from a cost plus contract to a fixed price contract halfway through a project, or you're not going to get paid. They're the unforeseens, the things that you don't have control of or that you've lost control of, generally speaking, as far as I'm concerned. I think, we try and manage things so that they all work out the way we had planned. But every now and again, that's just not possible. And that, for me, is when the stress sort of starts coming into things, really.
What do you love most about growing a small business?
Oh, the satisfaction you get from it. I didn't have to think about that one too much. I think if I see a smile on my guys' faces, they're all getting on, my clients are happy, the business is making money. I think if you can tick a few of those simple boxes, obviously there are more of them, but if you can tick a few of the simple ones and that everything's running in line and it just feels like the system is working, I get a great sense of satisfaction from that.
What has been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
Accepting advice from others. So I knew it all when I started off, and I knew nothing. And I could do anything I wanted to do, and anything was possible. And of course, it wasn't. But as a young person, you have to have that mindset, or you're not going to get out there and you're not going to have a go. But I guess if I'd taken the time to learn more from other people when I was younger, I would have grown quicker and made less mistakes.
Yep.
But it's about being able to do that. So I run my business at a different level now. It's turning over more money. Yes, it has more expenses, but it opens up lots of other opportunities for me personally, for the business to grow and all sorts of other things. So for me now, I pay for a business mentor, and I pay what I think is a reasonable amount of money, but it's well and truly worth it. It pays for itself over and over and over again. I couldn't have done that when I first started out. I simply couldn't have done that. Having said that, I didn't think I could afford it at the time I agreed to do it either. So yeah, no, that's definitely the most important thing. I'm very involved in the industry. I believe in giving back. I think if you give back, you end up with people wanting to give to you, and all of a sudden you don't have to pay for maybe the advice that you may have otherwise paid for. So I'd encourage people to do that too, because it's certainly worked for me. That's that karma thing coming back again.
Yeah, that's what I say to a lot of people starting out. Even if you can't afford to get a paid mentor or coach, approach business owners that you respect. You've seen they've walked the path that you want to go down. They may be retired, they may still be working the business, but you'd be surprised how willing people are to give even an hour of time there a month to go out for lunch or a coffee and just talk. And that's a good place to start. So you're getting an independent outside voice on your challenges in the business, and helping you with the opportunities as well.
It's interesting that you say that. I love imparting my knowledge on other people, because I think people might be interested for the next 5 years or so, and then they won't be interested in what I've got to say because I'll retire and I'll disappear into the country somewhere. But I went off and did a mentoring course myself through the Housing Industry Association. It was really worthwhile. I learned a lot about dealing with people, and even, about how to communicate with my employees and all sorts of things. But since then, I've had 2 people approach me and ask me to mentor them.
Mm-hmm.
And I have done some mentoring with one of them, and looks like I might be doing some mentoring with someone else soon. But once again, it's a hard thing for me, because I'd love to be doing mentoring and helping young people in our industry everywhere, but it's a time thing.
Yep.
So I've got to find the time to mentor the guys that are part of my team before I can find the time to mentor someone else.
Yeah. The number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
Right. The number one habit I think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain really is around time management. You can't work in your business 24/7 and expect to have a happy life. So at the end of the day, if you find yourself falling into this trap, you've really got to do something to change that. or you'll be like Troy and I. Marriage won't work. Then you'll wake up after it's happened. Well, I shouldn't speak for Troy, but then you'll wake up after it's happened and realize how important your relationship with those people that you love with is. And all of a sudden you'll be spending a lot more time with your kids and those people. But it probably would have been a good idea to have done it a bit earlier.
Yep. It's something I'm very passionate about in my coaching, and even when people don't want to hear it, about, making sure that you spend enough time on those relationships. Yeah, I certainly, my focus on business was probably a bit too much, which I think was part of contribution to my marriage imploding. So yeah, it's something I talk quite often about with owners. Jump over to growasmallbusiness.com and leave your details to get a short 2-minute email I send on Fridays to help small business owners like you become better leaders. I include some reading or professional development resources I've discovered in the last week. Can you talk to how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening?
Sure. I find the best way to add people to my team is to train them up, keep them enthusiastic, offer them opportunity, and hopefully they'll hang around. That's not always possible. People leave. You need people that are qualified. You can't just go and take on untrained people all the time. I've had some absolute rippers. I've had some good ones and I've had some bad ones. So I had one guy that came to work for me only 2.5 years ago. I was desperate. Could not find anyone. Simply could not find anyone. And I came across this guy, and he was rough and he was covered in tattoos. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with tattoos, but I'll get to his latest tattoo in a minute. And I thought, I think he could be okay. So I put him on, and he had some real problems outside his work. And I mentored him, and we started taking him to our gym class. We do a gym class for employees once a week. I started taking him to the gym class. He really got it together, and he was doing so well. And then all of a sudden he stopped coming to the gym class. He started drinking his mother drinks again, and he got his new tattoo of a female with her legs spread on the inside of his thigh, just above his short line. And obviously I had to let him go. So don't take someone on just because you're desperate and you think you might be able to make it work. I've had other guys who have showed little promise to start off with, but I just could see something in them. And then after 18 months, all of a sudden the light seems to come on, and they just blossom. But up until that time, it's taken them that long to mature, find their confidence and believe in themselves to be able to do it and go up and do it. Other people just start right from the get-go. So it's very difficult. For me, it's been a completely mixed bag. I've had some, guys that have just been fantastic. I've had others that haven't been that good. I think for me, employing people and talking about having good employees and bad employees, the advice that I would like to give is that if you have a doubt about someone and you think it's very easy to put people on, it's very hard. Well, I find it very hard to sack people.
Yep. The hardest thing.
However, if you have an inkling that this person isn't right, they're not right.
You've got to act on it.
And you will doubt yourself. You'll go, how am I going to cope with that person going? I'm not going to have those resources. Will I be able to do this? And you worry about these things. And eventually you put that person off, and it's taken you an extra 3 or 6 months than it should have done. And within 2 months of doing it, your team comes back together. Everything just resolves. I don't know how, but it happens every time. And you ask yourself the question, why didn't I do that earlier?
Yep.
That's happened to me several times now.
I've done it.
It's really hard, but a bad person in your team is infectious, and your team is going south at the rate of knots, and you can't even see it happening because it's happening without you being visibly aware of it, but it's happening.
Yeah, and the first point you made around all that, what I call the warm body syndrome, I'm desperate. I just need some resources in there. So you lower your standards, or you don't interview well enough and vet and reference check, etc., and you just get someone in because of the workload. That is a huge pressure that you've just got to fight. Take your time and make sure you only let A players on your team.
Correct.
What are some of the things you recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
Well, it's all about the staff again, really. I mean, culture is staff, isn't it? Culture within the business. So for me, I want my guys to want to come to work every day. I want them to be happy at work. I want them to get on with each other. That you can't always achieve that, obviously. But if I can create a good working environment where they want to come, they want to put in, they want to achieve, they want to learn, then they want to be at work, and they're my biggest asset. Without them, I'm nothing. So I've got 3 guys, 2 apprentices and a tradesman that I'm paying to put through the certificate for at the moment. So they're actually becoming qualified builders. A lot of my colleagues tell me I'm an idiot because they'll
They're going
get
to run
the
off.
qualification and they'll just go.
Yeah.
And they might, but they were going to go anyway.
That's right.
I've helped them, I know,
Mm.
but they might stay too.
Mm.
And I might be able to offer them something that they wouldn't otherwise have in the near future with those qualifications. So there are other reasons that I might retire.
Yep.
And I need to have a succession plan, and I'm looking at different options at the moment. But for me, ultimately, it would be really nice if some of these guys that I'm really fond of and that have given a lot to me over the years were able to benefit from me transitioning out of my business.
Yep.
But we'll just have to wait and see how that goes. As I was saying earlier, we run a gym class on a Friday. That's had not a hell of a lot of success, to tell you the truth, because these guys have got very physical jobs, but a couple of guys come regularly every Friday. You know, we have team meetings that we have. The business is driven or led to some degree by the opinions of the employees in different directions in which they're as qualified as I am. I seek their advice quite regularly. So at the end of the day, my business is nothing without them. So without a good culture, I don't have a business.
Yep.
If they're happy and they're enthused and things are working well, my stress level is greatly reduced. If I'm not investing in time in maintaining that stable workforce, it goes south quite quickly, or it can do, and it just becomes very stressful again.
Tell our audience how you've handled balance.
Well, I sort of covered off on that a bit already. I don't have the discipline to have a good work, or until recently, I didn't have the discipline to have a good work-life balance. I was falling into that trap of working too much and not having enough time off work. But I've been held accountable for that by my mentor now. It's very important to me to have that. I can see the value in having that. I just thought it was me being selfish and lazy. It was a mindset. I was brought up. I had a father or parents that pushed me from a very, very young age, very, very hard. And I thought if I wasn't working for every waking hour, well, I was lazy and I didn't deserve for my business to do well.
Yep.
That's wrong. And we all need to learn that.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful, the influence parents can have on the way you think about things. Yeah.
Yep. So having said that, I do have things that I enjoy outside work greatly. I've grown up on the water. I grew up at Blackmans Bay, which is a bay down the end of the Derwent River. I grew up sailing at Kingston Beach Sailing Club, which was just around the corner from Blackmans Bay. I grew up going away on small boats with my family when I was young. I ended up getting into windsurfing and became quite good at that when I was doing my apprenticeship and through those years. And then all my mates got into surfing and I got into work. And then after my children were born, I started offering them the same opportunities that I had when I was a kid. So I bought a boat and we would go away some weekends and not as often as we should have, but we would. And in the last 10 years since my other transition, well, I didn't have any money for a little while. So I actually got into surfing with the kids because that was very cheap and it got us in and on the water. Since then, we've gone back and we've now got another boat on the way, and we've got a diving boat, and I go diving with my son. He loves underwater photography, so that's become a passion of his. So I'll go and get crayfish and he'll take pretty pictures, which I know he's actually starting to become interested in fishing again,
Yeah.
which is really nice for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, my passions all revolve around water. And so for me, it's about trying to find the time to get in or on the water with my kids and my partner and do those things.
Yeah. How much professional development have you invested in yourself?
Probably not a lot, not enough, not as much as I should have. So my professional development really, or most of it has come from as a result of the time that I volunteer. Though that sounds a bit weird to people, but I've been very involved in the Housing Industry Association probably for about 20 years now, chairing various different committees and things at the HIA. I've had a stint as a vice president and president, and I'm still very involved, sit on the regional exec. I chair the Youth Build Committee. We run a program for kids in disadvantaged kids in schools and things. And as a result of all of that, I'm the first to know what's going on in the industry. I'm surrounded myself with people with lots of knowledge. I'm able to talk to them and do informal mentoring, I guess you could call it. On top of that, obviously, I have Mike working as a business mentor for me. I've always set my own goals and then had to try and work out how to achieve them. So my professional development in those areas has been very targeted because it's just been around what I've wanted to do or what I've wanted to get out of life or what I'm aiming to do at that particular time. But really, it's been a journey of learning as I go and from all the people around me. Yeah.
Great. Anything else on mentors or coaches? You've mentioned Mike a few times. Any other mentors you've had along the way or coaches?
Yeah, I have had some other mentors along the way. I probably didn't listen to them enough. I think when you're young, when I was young, I had children early. I had a lot going on with the business and things. I did have some mentors. I did some formal mentoring with a couple that really tried to help me with my business and did help me with my business. They helped me with marketing, general running of the business, starting to focus on my employees a little bit more and that sort of thing. But I was so wrapped up and so time poor that I just didn't take that information and do enough with it. I was on the tools. Once again, this is the time that I was on the tools. So this is when I was really struggling, when I got off the tools. Once I got my business to that stage where it had grown to a stage where I could get off the tools and I could then grow it again. That's when I started to listen to people more and to focus on my business more because I had the time to do it. If I'd made the time to do that earlier, it may have been a different journey for me.
Yep. And do you have a board of directors or advisors? I know Mike advises you, but
no board of directors, no advisors. Yep. It's me. I overthink everything. I then have to bounce those ideas sometimes off someone that I think might know a bit about it. I know a lot of people now because I'm old and I've done all this stuff in different areas. And as I was saying before, I think if you're prepared to give of your time to people, then there's always someone that you can ring up and ask a question of without feeling at all guilty, and they will make time to give you a very good answer.
Yep.
And that's invaluable.
All right, Rob, we're on to our final 5 questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
The people.
Yep, totally agree. Favorite business book which has helped you the most?
Don't have one. I've read a few over the years, and I guess I've taken the good bits and the bad bits out of some of them and embedded them in my mind, just things that stick. But really, it's been I'm not an avid reader or an avid listener. of
Yep.
podcasts, getting to your next.
Yeah, that's the next question.
That'll be your next question. So now that I've partaken in a podcast myself, I'm going to be forced to listen to my first podcast. I'll then know how to do it, Troy.
Yep.
And I might start listening to some more.
One tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
Advice from someone who's got a lot more experience than you have.
Yep. Final, my favorite question. What would you tell yourself on day one of starting out 31 years ago?
It's going to be a really stressful time. It's going to be rewarding at the same time. And be prepared to listen and accept advice.
Great.
It's really simple. I know that sounds like such a simplistic answer, but if you have some reality around what you're about to embark on, and it is going to be stressful because that's just the way it is. But it's also going to be really rewarding. If you're prepared to be passionate about what you're doing and give it a go, you will succeed. And it is going to be rewarding. And it's going to be so much easier to get there if you're prepared to take the advice of some other people.
Yeah, great advice, Rob, and really appreciate your time today. Congratulations on your 31 years, the ups and downs, but particularly the ups, and a strong focus on having a good team and looking after your team. And, you know, I love that you've niched down to be working just on renovations for professionals. That's a very smart move. So congratulations.
Thanks very much, Troy.
That's it. Thanks for listening. Please leave a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. It means more small business owners will find our cast and help people with their business growth journey.